biting wind screamed across the Hardangervidda Plateau, a desolate expanse of snow and ice that stretched to the horizon in every direction. It was February 1943, and World War II raged with unparalleled ferocity across battlefields from Stalingrad to the sands of North Africa. Yet high in the remote, snow-clad valleys of Telemark, Norway, a different kind of war was unfolding. A silent, desperate race for a weapon that promised to reshape the very fabric of global power, the atomic bomb. At the heart of this covert struggle stood the Vemork hydroelectric plant. To the untrained eye, it was an engineering marvel, a fortress of concrete and steel nestled beside the thundering Rajukan waterfall, harnessing its power to produce industrial nitrates. But within its labyrinthine depths, a chilling alchemy was taking place. Vemork was the only facility in Nazi-occupied Europe capable of producing heavy water, deuterium oxide, in significant quantities. This seemingly innocuous substance was, in fact, the critical ingredient for controlling nuclear chain reactions, a vital component in the development of an atomic bomb. Allied intelligence was grimly aware that while they furiously pursued their own atomic programs, the Nazis were doing the same, and Vemork was their most critical asset. If Hitler's scientists gained enough heavy water, a nuclear nightmare could become a terrifying reality, altering the course of the war and plunging the world into an even deeper abyss. The monumental task of preventing this catastrophe fell to a small, elite group of Norwegian commandos, meticulously trained by the British Special Operations Executive SOE. These weren't just soldiers, they were Norwegians, fighting for their homeland against a brutal occupation, their intimate knowledge of the treacherous terrain and their unwavering patriotism making them the perfect, albeit incredibly small, force for a mission that was, by all accounts, suicidal. The story of Operation GUNNERSIDE wasn't the opening salvo in the heavy water war. Months earlier, in November 1942, Operation Freshman had been launched. British paratroopers, accompanied by gliders carrying engineers and demolition experts, aimed to land near Vemork. The plan was audacious, relying on surprise and precision. However, fate, conspiring with the notoriously unforgiving Norwegian weather, intervened with brutal efficiency. Blizzards swept across the plateau, turning navigation into a blind gamble. Both gliders and their tow planes were buffeted mercilessly, leading to crashes miles off their intended drop zones. The few British survivors who managed to crawl from the wreckage faced an even crueler fate. They were captured by the Gestapo, subjected to brutal interrogations, and then summarily executed under Hitler's infamous commando order, which decreed that all captured commandos were to be killed without trial. Freshman was a catastrophic failure, a chilling reminder of the stakes involved and the ruthlessness of the enemy. It also served to put the Germans on high alert, significantly increasing the fortifications and patrols around Vemork. Despite the disaster of Freshman, the Allied resolve to neutralize the heavy water threat remained unshaken. The strategic imperative was too great. A new plan was conceived, one that placed its faith squarely on the shoulders of Norwegian courage and local expertise. This was Operation GUNNERSIDE. The core of the GUNNERSIDE team comprised 6 highly trained Norwegian commandos, each handpicked for their exceptional skills, resilience, and intimate knowledge of the Norwegian wilderness. Their leader was the stoic and resourceful Lieutenant Joachim Ronneberg, a man of quiet determination and meticulous planning. Alongside him were Kasper Eidlund, Birger Stromsheim, Klaus Hellberg, Frederick Kaiser, and Hans Storhag. Their mission was audacious in its simplicity, yet terrifying in its execution. Parachute onto the Hardangervidda Plateau, link up with a 4-man advance party, the Grouse Team, which had been enduring unimaginable conditions on the plateau since October, and together infiltrate and destroy the heavy water production cells at Vemork. The Grouse Team, Jens Poulsen, Arne Kjelstrup, Knut Hogland, and Klaus Hellberg, who had actually been part of Grouse before returning to the UK for further training and then joining GUNNERSIDE for the main assault, had been dropped months earlier to establish a base, monitor German movements, and prepare for the arrival of the main demolition force. Their survival on the desolate, snow-swept plateau through the brutal Norwegian winter was a testament to their incredible fortitude and survival skills. They lived in crude shelters, subsisting on meager rations, constantly battling frostbite, hunger, and the crushing isolation. On the night of February 16, 1943, under the cloak of a swirling snowstorm, Ronneberg's team made their jump. The landing was rough, miles off their intended drop zone, scattered by the relentless winds. But they were alive. For 5 grueling days, they battled the elements, navigating the vast, featureless plateau. Their only companions were the howling wind, the relentless snow, and the gnawing hunger. They subsisted on meager rations, occasionally supplemented by the hardy lichens that reindeer ate, and one incredibly fortunate reindeer kill that briefly boosted their spirits and provided much-needed sustenance. The sheer scale of the landscape, the blinding white of the snow, and the constant threat of hypothermia made every step a testament to their indomitable will. Finally, after a desperate trek that pushed them to the very limits of human endurance, they made contact with the grouse team. The reunion, far from a joyous celebration, was a moment of profound relief and renewed determination. The combined force of 11 men, a tiny band against the might of the German war machine, now stood ready to attempt the impossible. Vemork was no ordinary target. It sat perched precariously on a cliff edge, overlooking a deep, forbidding ravine, with the roaring Rjukan waterfall as its backdrop. Access was severely restricted. A single, heavily guarded suspension bridge provided the main entry point, while the surrounding slopes were treacherous and rumored to be mined. The Germans, their paranoia heightened by the freshman disaster, had fortified the plant meticulously. Searchlights swept the area, machine gun nests dotted the perimeter, and patrols were constant and vigilant. The commandos knew a frontal assault would be suicide. Their meticulous reconnaissance, aided by invaluable intelligence gathered by Professor Leif Tronstad, a brilliant Norwegian chemist who had helped design the Vemork plant and was now working for British intelligence, revealed a crucial vulnerability: the deep, seemingly impassable ravine beneath the plant. The Germans considered it impenetrable, and thus it was lightly guarded. This would be their entry point. On the night of February 27, 1943, under a partially clear sky that offered a sliver of hope, the commandos began their perilous descent into the ravine. The silence of the night was broken only by the crunch of their boots on the snow, the rhythmic hiss of their skis, and the distant roar of the waterfall. They carried their explosives, carefully packed and primed, along with their Thompson submachine guns and essential survival gear. The descent was a harrowing dance with gravity on icy, snow-covered slopes. They reached the bottom, crossed the partially frozen Mana River, and then began the arduous climb up the other side of the gorge, a 500-foot ascent up a near-vertical cliff face. Every handhold, every foothold, was a silent prayer. Miraculously, and with astonishing stealth, they reached the top, completely unnoticed. They found a rarely used railway track, a ghost path that led them directly to the outer perimeter of the plant. A single, thick chain locked the gate. Ronneberg, with a precision born of intense training, snapped it with wire cutters, the metallic snap almost deafening in the stillness of the night, yet it went unheard. Inside the compound, they split into 2 teams, a demolition team and a cover team. The cover team, led by Knut Haukelid, second in command of Gunnerside, took up positions near the German guardhouse, ready to engage if discovered, their weapons silent but loaded. The demolition team, led by Ronneberg, moved swiftly and silently towards the heart of the operation, the heavy water production cells in the basement. Their initial plan to enter through a side door was thwarted. It was locked, the contact who was supposed to leave it open having fallen ill. But Tronstad's meticulous intelligence had provided a crucial contingency, a narrow cable shaft, barely wide enough for a man, leading directly into the heavy water production room. Ronneberg and Frederick Kaiser, pushing their explosive packs ahead of them, squeezed through the cramped, dark passage, their bodies scraping against the cold metal. Inside, they found a lone Norwegian night watchman. He was startled, but quickly understood the gravity of the situation. He was a compatriot, a silent accomplice in the daring raid, offering no resistance and pointing out the critical areas. As the other 2 members of the demolition team, Eidlund and Stromsheim, found their own way in through a broken window, causing a momentary alarm as glass shattered, quickly stifled by the others. Ronneberg and Kaiser began to meticulously place the charges around the precious electrolysis cells. Each charge was small, about 4.5 kilograms of nitrocellulose, but strategically placed to ensure maximum destruction of the cells themselves, rather than just causing an indiscriminate explosion. Ronneberg, in a moment of decisive leadership, shortened the fuses from 2 minutes to a mere 30 seconds. He wanted to be sure they would hear the explosion as they made their escape, a final confirmation of their success. The charges were set, the fuses lit. With a final, urgent command to the watchman to seek cover, The team scrambled out the way they came, reversing their perilous infiltration. The muffled thud of explosions reverberated through the night. Inside the plant, it was a sudden, jarring cacophony of sound, but outside, the noise was largely absorbed by the thick concrete walls and the surrounding industrial machinery, leading the few German guards to dismiss it as normal operational sounds or a minor mechanical failure. By the time any serious alarm was raised, the commandos were already disappearing into the vast, snow-covered expanse of the Hardangervidda, like ghosts vanishing into the night. They split into smaller groups, a prearranged tactic to make tracking them harder and increase their chances of survival. Ronneberg's group, still wearing their British uniforms, a critical detail to ensure that if caught, it would be seen as an act of war by Allied soldiers rather than local resistance, thus preventing German reprisals on the civilian population. Embarked on an epic 14-day, 250-mile ski journey across the mountains to neutral Sweden. The endurance required for this trek was almost as formidable as the raid itself, battling blizzards, exhaustion, and the constant threat of German patrols. The others dispersed across Norway, melting back into the civilian population or joining other resistance cells, all eventually making their way to safety. Not a single shot was fired by the commandos during the raid itself. Not a single commando was lost. It was a textbook example of precision, courage, and planning, executed with almost surgical efficiency. The immediate impact on the German nuclear program was devastating. Around 500 kilograms of heavy water was destroyed, along with critical production machinery, effectively halting heavy water production at Vemork for several months. General Nikolaus von Falkenhorst, the head of German forces in Norway, famously called it the most splendid coup. The heavy water plant was put out of action, and the Nazis' dreams of an atomic bomb suffered a crippling setback. The Germans, desperate to restart production, immediately began frantic repairs. In November 1943, the Allies launched a massive aerial bombing raid on Vemork, further damaging the plant and cementing the Germans' decision to abandon large-scale, heavy water production in Norway. However, fearing that the remaining heavy water stock could still be utilized, they decided to transport it, along with critical components, to Germany. This desperate German attempt led to the final, dramatic chapter in the heavy water war. On February 20th, 1944, another Norwegian resistance team, including some members of the Gunnerside contingent, successfully sabotaged the railway ferry SF Hydro on Lake Tinn. The ferry, laden with drums of precious heavy water, sank to the bottom of the lake, taking with it the last significant hope for a German atomic bomb. This was the final nail in the coffin of the Nazi atomic ambitions. Operation Gunnerside stands as one of the most remarkable and successful acts of sabotage in military history. It was a testament to the extraordinary bravery, meticulous planning, and unwavering resolve of a small group of men who, against overwhelming odds and in one of the most desolate landscapes in Europe, played a pivotal role in preventing Nazi Germany from acquiring nuclear weapons. Their daring exploit, carried out with stealth and precision, ensured that the terrifying specter of an atomic Third Reich never became a horrifying reality, forever altering the course of World War II and indeed, the future of humanity. The heroes of Telemark, as they became known, returned to their lives after the war, many of them humble about their incredible achievements. But their legacy endures, a powerful reminder of how a small group of determined individuals can change the tide of history.